I was in rehearsal with another show, and I was on a break, and an actor said, what are you thinking of doing next? I said, I want to write a play called Doubt.
Doubt can be a bond as powerful and sustaining as certainty.
That's all I got, just got a title. But over time, it occurred to me to write about the Sisters of Charity that educated me when I was a boy in the Bronx.
Like Noah's Ark, 2x2.
When I was 6 years old, my first teacher was a nun named Sister James. And I had a very strong impression of her, that she was a good educator, that she was warm, but she did not indulge her warmth. She had a philosophy of teaching, and she stuck to it. And I did not see Sister James ever again until I wrote Doubt.
The phone rang, and someone asked for Sister James. It was this lovely young woman. She was Geraldine Cunningham when I taught her at St. Anthony's many years ago. And she brought up the play called Doubt. And she said, and do you know that that Sister James in the play is really about you? And I said, oh, stop. I can't believe that.
Sister James showed up and watched the play with me. I was terrified because I took her as a jumping off point, but it wasn't strictly her, you know?
I don't think I was apprehensive about the play itself. I think I was totally intrigued by the plot.
I wanted to write about just the day-to-day existence of what it was like for all the people who don't know what it was like to be in a little church school in a neighborhood in the Bronx in 1964. I never have any predisposition to think I know how an audience is going to respond to a play of mine.
I love this song.
But over time, the thing that I did know about the play was that the last act of the play took place after the play was over. And people walked out and discovered that the person that they'd gone with, their wife, their husband, their friend, didn't see the same play they did.
Well, I'm convinced.
You're not. You just want things to be resolved so you can have simplicity back.
Well, the interesting thing about Doubt when we did it as a play is we first did it at Manhattan Theater Club in a 300-seat house, and it went well. Then we moved it to Broadway, and the response doubled from what it had been in the previous house. It was very hard to adapt it into a screenplay because it was conceived as a play for 4 people in a couple of rooms, and then I had to open it up, as they say. And then I thought, let go of it and remember the place that you come from. Remember those families, the community, the people on the street, the kids in the class. Then it won't be so hard. Then it became a much richer experience and a much richer vein to mine to figure out how to tell the story. And then it became easier.
Jimmy, go to the store and buy me the newspaper and cigarette.
I can't. I'm serving Mass. I'm an older boy.
I've written a lot of plays. I've written a lot of movies. And I've gone back and forth between the two forms fairly often. And I like to think that they cross-pollinate each other, and I'm able to use techniques from one in the other. And certainly my theatrical background and my theatrical taste play a part in what some of these big scenes feel like and look like in the film.
Perfectly simple, you need a lot. You need the flow needs to continue.
Playwrights have a hard time directing their plays sometimes, but I think John knew exactly what he wanted to do. And I think he had an open mind as it was being done and changing and adapting as we went along effortlessly, I really thought. And he had a really great way about him on the set. So I have no doubt that he was the man for the job the whole time. He did a really great job.
So much of what's eloquent is in the moments where nothing is said. He understood the piece as an organism, as it's breathing in and breathing out.
It's got to stay true to form in order to keep its impact and power. He wrote it. It's in his head. And so he's the only one who can really bring it to life.
Snowman comes to life when an enchanted hat is put on his head. If the music were more somber, people would realize the images are disturbing and the song are radical.
I never thought about Frosty the Snowman like that. I think it's always important to research the time and research the place. And so much of that did come from John Patrick Shanley and from not only the play, but the adaptation.
We are at the intersection of St. Lawrence and Mansion. Behind us is the Catholic school where John Patrick Shanley attended first grade and grew up in this neighborhood here in the Bronx. So we have been in the heart of this story, and that's sort of like a very, very rare gift, I think. And I think I know that that's a sort of wonderful gift for John, to be able to shoot the story in his own backyard of his youth.
If I had him playing A Very Beautiful Zither, then off camera I could have him play this, record everything.
Okay, you do Mr. Amazing, what you do.
Well, this is a very New York picture and a very New York story. I'm from the Bronx. I've lived in New York all my life, and I wanted to go back and shoot in those locations.
The amazing thing about the neighborhood where John grew up, and this particular intersection where the school was, is that it seemed to have changed almost not at all.
We went back and shot on the street that I grew up on, and revisited many little things that add a richness and a texture to what you're doing that you can't replicate by going to Minnesota and saying it's New York. We had kids when I was growing up in the movie who are now playing parents in the congregation. We hired Sister Peggy, who's still teaching now, as our technical advisor. And she was on the set a lot and showed Meryl and Amy how to wear their bonnets and put on their rosary beads and all of that kind of stuff.
The world is crashing, Michael.
I haven't heard a wind like that since I left Mullingar.
I've never known a wind like it. The wind has changed.
I think it would have been kind of boring and derivative to attempt to take the stage play and just sort of recreate it in film. If we were going to do this, the amount of creative vitality that's necessary to mount a film required a fresh point of view. And I provide a fresh point of view because I didn't direct the play. And the cast really needs to provide that as well. And Meryl was the first person, Meryl Streep, that I thought of, as I think practically everybody did, for Sister Aloysius, because it just seemed to be an inevitable idea.
Straighten up.
And she immediately was on board, because I guess she felt the same way. So to begin with, I guess you went and saw the play. And could you tell me what that was like?
It was great. It was a great night in the theater, one of the great nights in the theater I've ever had, because I knew nothing about the play. I was there late in the run. I felt very guilty because I hadn't gotten there earlier to see it, and everybody talked about it and said, "Oh, you have to see it." And I said, "What's it about?" "Oh, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you." So, I didn't go because nobody would tell me what it was about. But finally I went, and it blew me away and I understood why people were not telling me what it was about, because you wreck it. Yeah. Anyway, Cherry Jones just sort of delivered a blow to my solar plexus at the end of that play. And I'd already been, had gone on an emotional roller coaster with the play. But I was shocked at the end, and I never feel that in the theater. I was torn up by many of the performances.
So now, I just want to talk a little bit about what it was like to work with your cast members. Were you pleased with the choice of Philip Seymour Hoffman for the role? Or?
I think he's, one of my favorite people to work with in my life. We've worked together twice. I want to work with him 1,000 more times. And he brings so many layers of humanity to the parts that he plays.
You have no right to step outside the church!
I will step outside the church! If that's what needs to be done, though the door should shut behind me, I will do what needs to be done!
So I was, you know, a fan of the play, but I never thought about playing the part. It was never anything in my mind of playing the part until John Shanley called me to offer me the role of Father Flynn in the film, which took me by surprise. And so I had to think about it then, and I didn't think about it too much. It just kind of answered itself pretty quickly.
There's a wind behind every one of us that takes us through our lives.
I thought that he was one of the most surprising, mercurial, and powerful actors. And he read the script and said, yeah, I'll do it.
I probably could have done without doing any research, but I did. I have a friend, Father Jim, and I talked with him, and I wanted to know what certain things meant, you know, and I'd seen sermons done before, but I went and saw a couple while I was rehearsing it.
Your bond with your fellow being was your despair. It was awful, but we were in it together.
Had you worked with Amy Adams before this picture?
No.
And so what was the experience of working with her like?
It was delicious. There are very few people that are young actresses, really, who can convey being truly innocent, being really, you know, the untrammeled snow. She can do that.
And you think he might have intentionally given himself a nosebleed?
Exactly.
No.
I had tea with Amy Adams here in New York at the Cupcake Cafe, and she was just a terrific choice for Sister James.
What a relief. That explains everything. Thanks be to God.
And sort of the perfect, warm center of the film between these two kind of battling giants that this principal and this priest were going to be. And I thought that she could hold her own. And I feel very confident in saying after shooting the film that she has held her own very well.
Well, I like Frosty the Snowman, and I think it's a good thing that I love to teach history and that I might inspire my students to love it too. And if you judge that to mean that I am not fit to be a teacher, then so be it. I was familiar with the play, and I absolutely loved the way that it was adapted for screen, and I just fell in love with the character, and it was really something that I felt strongly about doing.
She came up for dinner to the convent, and I was so delighted to meet her. And I think she makes Sister James come alive in a very vibrant way.
Sister James sent me down.
What for?
Talking.
Well, go back up and shut up.
I learned a lot about my character from the way that Meryl approached Sister Aloysius and the way that Philip approached Father Flynn.
What's going on?
As a mother,
Yeah.
that scene that you play with Viola Davis, where she's telling you the things that she's telling you, and
Yes.
how did that feel?
Her work was so fully realized and revelatory, and you know, it's great. It's great.
So you're giving my son the blame. No problem, my son getting blamed, and you know why that
You
is.
should let me talk. I think
Sister,
you're
you ain't
getting
going
upset
against
now.
no man in a robe and win. He's got the position.
And he's got your son.
Let him have him then.
Viola Davis was Scott Rudin's great passion. He thought that she was the perfect person for the role, and I was not convinced. And we did screen tests with, I have to say, some of the most talented actresses I've ever seen. And Viola gave a great screen test, and she won the role.
I don't want to speak for the other actors, but I'm going to attempt to. I think we were all terrified, and there's no egos. There were no egos, and you don't want to see the devices. You don't want to see the function. You want to see people.
He looks up to him, man, gives him his time, which is what the boy needs. He needs that.
There's so many ways that people express their identity that have to do with clothing, the choice of eyeglasses that you wear.
Yeah. Everything's a choice.
You don't have any of those choices to make when you're wearing the habit. And as an actress, expressing your identity or expressing your point of view, I would imagine gets channeled, almost like that bonnet channels your face forward. and not to the left or
You
right.
think you don't have a choice. It's just like in my town. There were the kids that went to high school, and then there were the girls that went to the Catholic school. Now you'd think, well, they have a uniform. No, no, no. It just means that the number of choices get narrowed, but the choices in how you differentiate become so eloquent and so sizable, you know, how far you roll that skirt up. Similarly with Sister Aloysius. Everybody wears a hat that goes like this, but you can bend it to go like this. Do you know what I'm saying? Everything is a choice. Where you wear that rosary, some people, you know, when I spoke with the nuns, everybody had her own way, which was the way to do it, to drape the rosary. This is the correct way. But 2 different nuns would tell me a different way. So, you know, the individual is there.
Yeah.
It's always there.
When you are lost, you are not alone.
There's all kinds of faith, and all of these faiths are tested in one way or another over time. The Sisters of Charity, I've never seen depicted in any other film or play, and I thought that people would be interested to see what these people were like.
What was Father Flynn's sermon about?
Doubt. He was talking about doubt.
When I saw the movie, you know, I was involved in the emotion of it and its argument and its passions and all those things. What I wasn't prepared for was its beauty. It's really, Roger Deakins, the cinematographer, it's like, you know, it's beautiful. And people really see it through the prism of their own biases, their own experience, their own emotional connection to not just the church, but to authority, certain kinds of authority, celestial and temporal authority. It can be read on a lot of different levels.
It is unsettling to look at people with suspicion. I feel less close to God.
When you take a step to address wrongdoing, you are taking a step away from God. But in His service,
Now, we're all faced with this throughout our lives, you know. You never can be utterly sure of anything. And yet, sometimes action is called for.
You've got it in your head that I corrupted this child after giving him wine, and nothing I say will change that.
that's right.
The emotional kind of crux of the story has to do with human beings more than anything, so it could be anybody.
You just don't like him.
This story allows you to experience the struggle to be certain in an uncertain world.
You don't like it that he uses a ballpoint pen. You don't like it that he likes Frosty the Snowman, and you are letting that convince you of something terrible, just terrible.
My hope is that you'll get caught up in the mystery aspect of it, and then at a certain point transcend that and go, you know, actually, I've become more interested in other things other than simply whether this person is guilty or innocent, whether this person is right or wrong. And I've started to become more interested in questions that I've had in my own heart, my own life, about being a human being on this earth and how to live and what to do and how to be effective and useful to my fellow beings.
I imagine all of you saw the play when it was on Broadway.
I
No,
didn't.
You didn't?
No.
And for the 3 of you that did, are you happy you did, or were there times that you wish that you hadn't as you were filming this?
I was so happy I did. I love, sounds so corny. I love going to the theater. I love going to the theater. I love it. You know, so when you asked me that question, I'm like, yeah, I was extraordinarily happy that I saw that. And ultimately, the film was a different thing. And it truly became a different thing. And I'm glad, I mean, personally, I'm glad I just had the opportunity to get a shot at playing that role. Well, I think it's an excellent idea to rethink the Christmas pageant. So last year's effort was a little woe-begone.
Oh, I loved it. But I love all pageants. The hymns. Oh, Little Town of Bethlehem. O come, Emmanuel. O come,
All
O
right.
ye faithful.
Thank you, Sister Jane. It's one of the few times that I have been in a theater where twice the audience audibly, as one voice, gasped, you know. And that's really an
You know, sometimes that's a question for the viewer and the audience more so than the actor.
That's so true.
That the audience has to be open enough for another interpretation, you know, and another voice. And sometimes they're resistant to that. That's sometimes the part that, you know, people really need to explore more.
My boy came to your school because they were going to kill him in a public school. His father don't like him. You come to your school, kids don't like him. One man is good to him, this priest. Then does a man have his reasons? Yes. Everybody does. You have your reasons, but do I ask the man why he's good to my son? No.
Once we were shooting it, the question of us seeing the play is not even in our mind. I mean, and I don't think it came back up again until asked.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it really is a great observation that I do think the viewers who've seen the play, it's more of a question for them now in comparing and contrasting stuff. But for us, that had to be kind of left to the side, I think.
Do you think a movie audience is less tolerant of uncertainty in what they're watching than a theater audience?
They're less used to it. Yeah. Theater audiences are more challenged generally, in every way. That's sort of the point of the theater. And if you don't like that, you don't go to the theater. And so I think, yes, the answer to your question is they're not used to it. I don't know if they don't like it. I think it's something that maybe grows on you and you think about it longer than you thought you would. Because movie audiences, we tend to make it, speaking as a member of one, we tend to make our quick decision about it, you know, almost 10 minutes in. We watch the first 10 minutes of a movie like a trailer. Am I going to stay or what? And it's a different commitment you make to watching a play. You don't get up and leave if you don't like it.
That would be the worst way to watch this movie, would be with any snap judgments after a 10-minute period of time, wouldn't it?
Well, I think John kind of counts on you making those snap judgments and then undermining them. He wants to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, I made a snap judgment when I first read the character, completely.
Which character?
My character. Yours. I wasn't reading their character.
Sorry.
Blah, 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 blah.
It was Mrs. Miller's story. It was a story about Mrs. Miller.
Right. With 85 other pages.
Yeah, exactly. And then you discover who the character is, and then that's the moment that it's up to you to have courage. You have to have courage to just kind of trust that, to tell the truth of who the character is. I wanted her to be someone different.
My son needs some man to care about him and to see him through the way he wants to go. And thank God this educated man with some kindness in him wants to do just that.
This will not do.
I can only imagine the amount of times you've all been asked, so did he do it? That's not the most productive question. I want to know, what do you all think an audience should be debating?
When I saw the whole film put together, I thought about my own tendency to be judgmental.
Yes.
And what?
Oh, I'm just laughing. It's a human thing, makes me laugh.
And I thought about, this will be hard for critics because they are that, you know,
Yes,
and it's, will they see themselves? No.
The Christmas pageant. We must be careful how Donald Miller is used.
Easy, sister.
All right, what about Donald Miller?
You sit back from certain films and just let them entertain you. But the ones that are really annoying are the ones that reach in and ask a question that's a little unnerving. So,
in my fantasy, I would think that if anyone went into therapy who was kind of arrogant about their own shortcomings, I think the moment of truth would be in therapy if their hearts were convicted and they really saw their putridness. Seriously, if they, the therapist really just showed them their shortcomings. The moment of truth would come if they stayed in the therapy and battled it out, or if they left. Now, there are a lot of people who would just leave. And it's the same thing with the movie. Once your heart is convicted, about your own tendencies to be judgmental and to have rigid belief systems, are you going to explore them? Are you going to acknowledge that?
We must be careful in the pageant that we neither hide Donald Miller nor put him forward.
Because of the color of his skin?
That's right.
Why?
Come, Father.
I think he should be treated like every other boy.
Well, you yourself singled the boy out for special attention. You held a private meeting with him at the rectory a week ago?
Yes. It is fun to hear people's conversations, and I never interject. And they're waiting for me to tell them. Mm-hmm. And they say, well, what do you think? And I say, it's not about what I think, it's about what you think, and that's what's great about the film. Because it's about what each person thinks and what experience they walk into this film with and what their perspective is. More than any film I've ever done, people bring their own personal perspective and they are just not going to move. Yeah. They're like, no, I know that character.
Yeah, exactly.
I know him. I know her. And I'm like, but you don't.
The boy acted strangely when he returned to class.
He did.
When he returned from the rectory, a little odd, yes.
Can you tell us why?
You spend your life creating yourself. Do you know? I think you know what I mean? Not actively, but you spend your life and you become who you are, whether you're aware of it or not. And those moments in life where you're like, oh, wait, what if everything I put together in this very careful way is standing on sand? Yes. You know, and you see the energy it takes to, and I am speaking from energy sometimes it takes to hold on to who you are, what you stand for, stand by, or how you're living your life. And then sometimes that idea of like, I'm not going to hold on, I'm not going to hold on, and poof, and that thing that happens, and when that happens, how things flood in and flood out, and sometimes it closes up like 5 minutes later. And I do think, I would hope that this film would, because I think what Viola and Meryl do in the movie, and then what ultimately Meryl does in the movie through Sister Aloysius, is that moment of it's allowing you to open that thing.
Do I ask the man why he's good to my son? No.
One of the centerpieces of the film is the scene with the two of you, Mrs. Miller and Sister Aloysius. In the film, a lot of it takes place outside. You're walking through the sidewalk. In the play, I think it was all inside. What do you think it adds to it to have it be outside?
I'm not sure it's so dependent on the setting as the game-changing aspect of the human emotion that is uncovered and revealed. And I think that the film, the play is going in one direction. Did he, didn't he? Did he, didn't he? And then this other information from Mrs. Miller comes, emotional information. It completely takes a left turn. The whole thing goes, didn't see that coming.
It's just till June.
I'll throw your son out of this school.
Why would you do that if it didn't start with him?
Because I will stop this.
I still felt very powerless, in the scene.
Even though you're taller than me.
Yeah, and even though I'm tougher than you, Mel.
No!
I 15 rounds with you. No, I'm only kidding. No, that was really a joke.
What are we talking about?
Donald Miller?
You and I talked a couple weeks ago, and I asked you what it was like because Sister James is so much more inward and a little quieter than the people that she's surrounded with in this film, and whether that was difficult to maintain.
Her silence was her strength. Once I surrendered to that, because that's something I haven't learned in life, and I'm working on.
Are you working on it then?
Right now? I did. If you noticed, I started really loud, and now I've become an active
got it down.
listener.
I got you. I see it. How did he act strangely?
I'm not sure how to explain it. He laid his head on the desk, and
Do you mean you had some impression?
Yes.
And he come from the rectory, so you're asking me.
That's it.
Hmm.
The difficult part about it for me was that the character doesn't have that moment of release. She never gets to cry, she never gets to scream, she's completely restrained and respectful. And sometimes as an actor, you want a release.
Well, I like Frosty the Snowman. And I think it would be nice if this school weren't run like a jail, and I think it's a good thing that I love to teach history and that I might inspire my students to love it too, and if you judge that to mean that I am not fit to be a teacher, then so be it.
Sit down. Look at that. You blew out my light.
Do the two of you want to play nuns now in every movie you do because you don't have to worry about your hair and you can eat what you want and because you're covered up? Or do you have to worry about your hair, even though it's underneath?
I didn't worry about it.
You just had to make, we had a team of people just to tuck away flyaways.
Yes.
Like little pieces.
There was this moment when we were shooting, and I would say this, I'm not to embarrass Meryl, but they were in this thing, and I remember I had to go, and I had to leave, and I had some off-camera stuff, something like that. And as actors, you always check in, because you want to make sure that if you're going to leave, that everything's cool. Sometimes you check in. And I remember opening the door. Meryl was in the room, and she had it off.
Yeah.
And I remember she turned around and looked at me. I thought, what a pretty woman. I actually said it. Remember? I was like, because I had seen her in this thing for days and days and days. And I was like, it just came out of my mouth. I was like, because the difference was so shocking.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
That's sweet.
This is true. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure to talk to you all.
Thanks a lot.
We're at fortissimo at 26, which is great. And the violins at 27.
Sound is going to play a real part in the film. Nature and nature impinging on the edifices of man is going to play a real part in the film.
Watch your step here, sister.
And the score will certainly play a major part in the film. I have thoughts about what I want it to sound like, but then the reason that I hire a gifted composer is to sit there and tell him my thoughts and then have him respond and react and add to or alter what I'm saying until we come up with what we want it to sound like.
When I started working with John, we sit down and discuss the different scenes in the film and the use of music, and we asked ourselves why. And we're looking for thematic relationships in music with the characters and in the story, trying to develop the emotional arc of the film in music and trying to create a score that's an image of the written words of the film. John's writing is so good that I felt as a composer I was often in his slipstream in writing music to his ideas.
My husband will kill that child over a thing like this.
I will try.
I like to write to the center of the story. So I'll look for the smallest detail. I look for the relationships. There's actually thematic pieces for the wind. And this is a very important theme, to show the relationships of the old giving way to the new.
The wind is so peripatetic this year.
There's a theme for Father Flynn, and because the story so much develops around his character, the theme is used to give him, I felt, a sense of balance between the two other nuns.
Is gossiping a sin? She asked the old man. Was that the hand of God Almighty pointing a finger at me?
But the music had to stay neutral in scenes, not to cast overwhelming judgment and allow the viewer, the audience, to make their own decisions.
And that, said Father O'Rourke, is gossip.
And it is a chamber music approach that I felt was right for the intimacy of the story, the setting of the story. I based the judgments on cinematography, on the lighting, on the editing. I think working with John, you tend to listen a lot, because what he's saying, he's giving you clues into the story. And I felt writing music compositionally for John's ideas made me a better composer.